All right, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. Of course, this is a team that we all understand needs to go through a massive attitude shift the offseason. That was clearly the goal. We saw it through the draft. We've now seen it through the undrafted free agent process. And now that we're into rookie mini camps, we're starting to look at some of these rookies, especially what the coaches are saying and doing. That's really important to evaluate here. What are the coaches saying about these certain prospects? And there's one rookie in particular, looks like he's bringing a major culture change to the Dolphins. I think this is exciting stuff. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, when it comes to the Miami Dolphins over the past few seasons, when healthy, it's very clear they're one of the more talented teams in the entire AFC. But when it comes to winning games late in the year, and this is a very real criticism of Mike McDaniel, as good as he is in terms of X's and O's and working with Tua, is that they lack a lot of toughness at times. They lack a lot of physicality needed to win those playoff games. Obviously, every NFL player is extremely tough, but that extra incremental toughness, that championship vigor, I'll say, is what's needed to win those big playoff games. And sometimes the Dolphins in those big moments haven't had it, but there's one rookie in particular that I think is bringing something incredibly special in terms of toughness and attitude to rookie minicamp so early in the process, so much so that the coaches almost have to try and dial him back. And this is Kenneth Grant, obviously the first round pick. Let's get into the report and then we'll go into the details on the other side. This is courtesy of the Palm Beach Post. Miami Dolphins defensive coaches Anthony Weaver and Austin Clark warned first-round draft pick Kenneth Grant to slow down at the start of rookie minicamp. I freaking love that. First-round pick, full speed. He's looking to kill people, whether they're in pads or not. Love to see it. Grant, a defensive tackle, wants to bring high energy and make an instant impact. Yeah, I'm for sure going to put my foot down and show people what I'm about, Grant said. What Coach McDaniel was talking about is there's a right way to practice and a right way to do things to not get hurt, Grant said. I'm a culture changer, Grant said. I come from a winning culture. Obviously, the NFL is different, but I kind of know what winning is like. Look, I think this is incredibly important, right? And I understand the coaching staff. Listen, let's throttle it back a little bit. Magic Johnson has a great story, obviously the NBA Hall of Famer. He says when he comes to evaluating point guards, he hates point guards that have no turnovers, right? He wants point guards to be hyper aggressive, be flying all over the place, go over the line, and then dial them back just a little bit. You want to be as close to the line as you possibly can, and then just dial it back and just calibrate, right? And I love Kenneth Grant taking that same approach here. He is going crazy. Ball to wall. He is killing people. He is just, his level of energy and enthusiasm coming into practice, and this is rookie minicamp, which is notoriously low on energy and enthusiasm. All minicamps basically are. Even training camp, the way the NFL regulates it these days, can be very low on this kind of thing. Kenneth Grant, not so. Coming from Michigan, he's like, listen, I'm here to set an attitude change. I'm here to bring a culture change. We are going to be a physical team. We're going to be a high attitude team, certainly up front, certainly when it comes to stopping the run, which the Miami Dolphins haven't been when it comes to their front seven players, their edge guys, their defensive linemen, certainly last season, and the way the roster is shaking up this year. In fact, when you go into the data, I think it really jumps out at you. Let's go into our first chart here, and this is the run defense based on the 2024 season, right? You look at the roster the way it was. We have Kenneth Grant's grade all the way on the far left, and then we have everybody else's grade in terms of the top handful of guys on the Dolphins roster in terms of stopping the run. And I think stopping the run in the NFL, a lot of it is talent, but a lot of it is want to and energy. Are you willing to take on the double team, put your face into someone else's face, and do it 40 snaps a game? And you can clearly look at these numbers here and see Kenneth Grant is basically in college now. We'll throw that caveat in there. Basically at the same level as a Calais Campbell, who of course is a great player. Then you have Ogba, you have Sealer, and you have Quentin Bell, and there's steep drop-offs along the way. Campbell and Ogba are obviously gone. So we know the Miami Dolphins, as much as they had issues stopping the run at times last year, they're actually in a much worse situation if you look at the veterans coming into this season. Let's go ahead and pull up that chart as well, just so everyone can really see it here. You got Sealer, Quentin Bell, and Jalen Phillips, and the drop-off gets worse from there. So we're talking defensive linemen and edge players, right? We're not really factoring in, middle linebackers or safeties or anything like that. You can clearly see Kenneth Grant's run defense grade step function higher than everybody else. And this is exactly why you drafted him. A lot of people were critical of the Dolphins. They said it's a reach to draft Kenneth Grant. If you're going to bring him in as a run-stopping, culture-changing guy, this is exactly why you bring him in. And I understand the Dolphins coaching staff, you want to rein him in a little bit, right? You don't want him to hurt anybody. But I tell you what, I guarantee you in the meeting rooms, the Dolphins coaches are like, this is what we wanted, right? This is what we needed. We needed a guy to come in and make this team a little tougher. We needed a guy to come in to bring in a new attitude, to bring in some energy, to bring in some physicality, right? To take it to that next level. Obviously, the Dolphins had energy. Obviously, they were a physical team, but they were missing that championship level, that deep playoff run level. It's clearly obvious, right? That's what was the biggest issue, along with injuries, of course. Now that you hope injuries are solved, let's obviously caveat that. But now that you have Kenneth Grant in here, I think we can all look at this Dolphins team, at least with Grant involved, as a guy who could come in and change the culture and change the attitude, certainly when it comes to stopping the run. And hopefully that'll spread throughout the entire roster. I think it will. When you have this much energy, this much infectious competitiveness, this is contagious. It will reverberate through the entire locker room, and it will change the attitude in Miami for the better. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this, but Dolphins fans in the comment section below, of all the Dolphins moves, all their draft picks, undrafted free agents, all the rookies added into the pool, which one was your favorite, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the best, but just your favorite rookie that was added into the mix, undrafted free agent or draft pick, doesn't matter, right? Is this a guy you thought was a steal, a guy that you think is a great player, maybe a fan favorite from college, you watched him on Saturdays, whatever it may be. Give us your favorite Dolphins selection or undrafted free agent acquisition and put them in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest news out of Miami?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a great job, Miami, bringing in a guy who can really elevate this team. Because when I look at these charts you bring in, yes, you can look at the numbers and see, statistically up and down what has happened to this Dolphins team as far as run defense goes. And I think that's very important. I think that's something that, they need to be able to fix, which Grant does bring to the table. But I think for me, more importantly, what else did they lose? You look at who they lost. Calais Campbell, a guy that's a big time leader, a vocal leader, a guy who really probably was the voice of that defense in the locker room at times. And can you bring someone back into the fold that is that type of vocal leader? And it seems like Kenneth Grant is definitely that guy. He's high energy, he's alpha mentality. He comes in and he's like, I'm bringing the championship culture back to this team already. Just come in, and he has that mentality. I love that out of a guy. I love that out of a first round draft pick. You want them to bring everything to the table they can. He brings the stats, he brings the PFF grades, he brings all of the measurables to the table, but he brings the intangibles as well. It seems like he's setting the tone at practice. We're going full speed. You're gonna have to, hold me back, pull me back. I want to be the guy that comes in here and just gets after it day in and day out and set the example for my teammates. Also, I feel like I bring a championship culture, a championship mentality to teams. I can spread that throughout this Dolphins locker room. So I think that's very important as well. Just overall being able to replace something, as because I've seen every team Calais Campbell has gone to, he's been that guy. He's been very, very impactful in the locker room. And to lose a guy as such, really, I think it would be tough to really replace him. But you bring in a guy like Grant, I think he really is going to do a good job in being that vocal voice in the locker room, building himself up to be a leader on this Dolphins team that I think is going to be very successful. Because outside of the interior, talk about run defense grade, this team really need help there. But you look at the edges are looking good. Bradley Chubb will be back after injury, not being able to play for a while. Hopefully he's back to form, so that would be great. But Chop Robinson, another young guy on the defensive line for the Dolphins, that's going to be a great addition as well. So for those two guys, Grant and Robinson, to be able to build something to, bring that championship culture, championship mentality back to this Dolphins team, I think it's important. We've seen they've been teetering, they've been on the edge. We've been wondering what's going on with the Dolphins for a while now. Can they have some guys come back that don't seem negative? That you hear about Tyreek Hill, like, is he going to want to get traded? Is he want to leave Jalen Ramsey? They're going to have to, try to deal with him as far as get someone to trade for him. All we hear is negative. Now we're starting to hear the positive. We're hearing Kenneth Grant coming back. I want to bring championship mentality. I love that word. I love what he's saying there back to the Dolphins. I think this is really great news early on for them. I think this is going to do a lot of good for this team going forward.
And it's very important because a lot of people that were critical of Miami in terms of drafting Kenneth Grant, where they did, they said, oh, some people had him a second round grade, end of the first round, things like that. And obviously the Dolphins drafted him much, much earlier than that. But if you look at every single scouting report of Kenneth Grant, the mental side of it, the leadership side is missing completely. And that's so important. People always forget, and we talk about it all the time, is that these NFL teams are obviously, these are full of human beings, right? These are not, Madden video game players where it's just a summation of your attributes and an overall score, and whoever team has the highest overall score wins games and wins championships. That's not how it works. These are human beings and players that have to go through, practices and game plans and then games and bounce back from losses and don't get too high after wins and have the mentality to go into tough environments and win tough games and hold court at home and go through all these different things. It is a challenging process to be a mental NFL player at a high level, and you need a guy who can handle it, and you need a guy who can bring the energy, who wants to be a culture changer. And that's something that I think is incredibly underrated. It's one thing to be a rah-rah guy. Rah-rah guys suck. They're loud and annoying, whether on football teams or in any sort of walk of life. Guys that are just sort of, yeah, let's go team, yeah, and just scream and yell and, just, all right, shut up, dude, you're being annoying. But what Kenneth Grant is doing is a whole nother level of that. And this is really important here to distinguish between the two. Kenneth Grant's coming here with a very vocal statement. He wants to change the culture. He wants to make this a championship culture. And he's willing to compete at a higher level. It's important to understand him going harder in practice makes his life suck more, right? A rah-rah guy is the guy who stands on the sidelines when nothing's going on and just cheers and yells and just says random platitudes. No one cares, right? That's taking no extra effort. Kenneth Grant is pushing his body to the absolute max. He's outworking people. That's what's missing from the story, and I think that's what's been missing from the Miami Dolphins. Is this is not just a function of Kenneth Grant wanting to change the attitude and going full speed at practice, right? The undertone here is that he is pushing his own body, his own mental toughness even more to be the leader in that regard, right? Because if you're going full speed and everyone else is going 3/4 speed, it means you're the one who's exhausted at the end of practice, who needs some fluids while everyone else feels pretty good. You're the one who's pushed his body and his mind to the limit while everyone still had some gas in the tank. And I think that's the biggest problem with Miami I've noticed over the past few seasons. I know injuries play a role, and I get it. But when I look at a Mike McDaniel-led team, I always feel like they end the season, and everyone can probably feel this way a little bit. It feels a little disappointing where it's like, I feel like they left something on the board there. I felt like they could have done something more. I look at, of course, that regular season finale against the Bills a few years ago. It just felt like the Dolphins left something there, an opportunity there, right? I look at the playoff game in Kansas City where it's like, boy, it just felt like when they got to Kansas City, they didn't bring everything with them. Kenneth Grant's a guy who brings everything he has and more day in and day out. Obviously, he's an athletic freak. He's an incredible tester. He did great things at Michigan, but it's the leadership, it's the culture element, it's pushing himself and dragging his teammates, if need be, across the finish line. I love this from a young guy coming in. He doesn't care that it's the NFL. He doesn't care that, he's got big name coaches all around him. He's going to bring that attitude. He's going to bring that culture, and it's the responsibility of the coaches to pull him back. I love that, and I guarantee you the Dolphins coaching staff is big fans as well.